Okay, it looks like everything I said about Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl and Legends Arceus in the past was completely unfounded. I take back everything I said. Alright, hey guys. So, as most of you have probably already seen, the recent Pokemon Presents showed us a lot more about the upcoming games, and all I can say is I am extremely satisfied with what I saw. Almost every concern that I've had with these two games seems to have been addressed, and I'm very optimistic about them going forward. So I guess I'll start with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, because that's the part where I had, some of the bigger concerns in terms of, okay, this is going to be a faithful remake, but how exactly are we defining faithful here? Because that can mean any number of things, and depending on how that's defined, it could have a huge effect on what this game ends up being and whether or not I like it. And so it seems like a lot of my concerns were a bit premature and based more on the fact that the game looks like Diamond and Pearl, less so than that they're trying to recreate the game completely beat for beat. So the two main concerns that I had are we going to have the Sinnoh Pokedex, and are we going to have HMs or not? So in terms of the Sinnoh Pokedex, we still don't know for sure if we're going to have the full Platinum Dex, but we saw a lot more Pokemon that were not in the initial Diamond and Pearl Dex, that it makes me feel more confident to say that we're probably getting the full Pokedex here. However, the thing that stuck out to me the most is the fact that they said that in the new Underground, which I will get to in a second, that is where you can find some Pokemon that can't be found anywhere else in the Sinnoh region, and they showed a Houndoom, which is a Pokemon that is in the Platinum Pokedex. So my new question is then, I guess, is this going to be a case of where all of the Platinum Dex Pokemon are going to be part of this new Underground system? Or is it just going to be a select few Pokemon that are being migrated from their old Platinum locations to there? So in terms of the HMs, they still didn't show anything that tells us one way or the other whether or not they're going to be there. However, as some of you pointed out in the comments, the website itself for the game states that there's going to be some type of modernizations. So that seems to show to me that we're going to have a change to the HM system in some capacity. We do know that they're there because the trailer showed a rock climb wall, so we do know for certain that something is going to need to replace HMs if they don't come back. Moving on to some of the new stuff that has me really, really excited is that following Pokemon are back again, I guess, because it's come back like, 3 different times now? Let's Go, Sword and Shield, and now here. But, oh my god. It seems like it's going to be very much like what we had in Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. It doesn't seem like it's going to have as much personality as what we saw in Let's Go, where every Pokemon had a unique following animation, but that's also a case of where that game only had 153 Pokemon in it, so they had less Pokemon to animate, so they had more time to make all of them look good. Whereas in this case, they had to make chibi models for each of these Pokemon that are separate from their battle models. Bigger point though I have with it is that it looks way better than what they did in Sword and Shield. Because Sword and Shield, it was very clear that was an afterthought, and just, yeah, no. I liked that it came back in Sword and Shield, but not quite how they went about doing it, if that makes sense. The other major feature that I'm really excited to see come back is trainer customization. So obviously this was something that fans wanted for a long, long time in the series, and when they came to X and Y, people were ecstatic. Then obviously a lot of us got really upset when it was cut from Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and then they tried to justify it by saying it was going to be something that was unique to Kalos, and made it sound like we weren't ever going to see it again. And then they backpedaled for Sun and Moon, because as it turns out, people actually like these features. And I am so glad that unlike ORAS, it is going to actually play a role here. It looks like it might be a bit more simplified than what we saw in previous games. It seems like it's more like the single outfit system, but that's perfectly okay, because the original Diamond and Pearl had nothing, and this game having something is definitely a plus. The last new feature that I'm very much intrigued about is the Grand Underground. So the Underground was a thing that was in the original Diamond and Pearl, but it seems like this has been expanded quite a bit. So obviously there's quite a bit of stuff that's returning, such as the secret bases, and my big question for that is, are we going to see expansions to that feature like we saw in ORAS? I mean, obviously we have the statues and the bases that affect the new zones where you can find Pokemon, but we're gonna have other features like how you could basically make a gym in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, because that was one of the coolest parts of that game, if I'm honest. Like, that was so awesome to be able to do, and also was very convenient for grinding. You could use those Blizzy bases so easily to get experience. They were fantastic, honestly. And obviously, I've already said most of my piece about the Pokemon Hideaways, so I guess the only other question I have is, like, what kind of variety are we going to have? And are they going to be restricted to certain parts of Sinnoh? So are these going to be things that sort of open up as you go through the game, or are you going to be able to find pretty much every type of biome in the first area that you encounter? I guess it's probably going to be more the former, so that it doesn't break progression and let you get extremely broken Pokemon early on, but who knows, honestly. I honestly could not tell you. And obviously a few other points of interest are, how is the mining minigame going to work in this particular context? Because it seems like not having the touchscreen is going to affect how the gameplay is docked. I mean, it wasn't timed initially, it was just so many hits, so I guess they could just map it to the D-pad or analog stick. But at the same time, it's going to be kind of annoying if that's going to be the way we're going to have to use it. And then obviously, there's the question of, is this going to be online multiplayer compatible? Or is it going to be something that's still strictly local? Personally, I feel like if they don't make it online, then it's going to not really work that well as a feature. Because I'm going to be honest, I never really used the Sinnoh Underground all that much in Generation 4 because it was all local multiplayer, so there was literally no point in using it. Obviously, there are going to be some other questions in terms of, like, how are gyms going to be laid out in terms of Gym Leader and Elite Four teams, and whether or not they're the original or Platinums doesn't really matter that much to me. And I'm actually kind of glad they're keeping it a secret, because one of my grievances with ORAS was that they revealed everything. That's something I'm going to really praise this trailer on, because they only showed a single gym leader. They showed the first gym leader as their example. They're not revealing the entire plot. They're not showing us every new Mega Evolution, or basically telling us almost everything that's going to happen in the Delta episode. So, yeah, I'm kind of happy about that. I think they're taking the right direction with the marketing in terms of how much you should reveal versus how much you should leave up to surprise. I'm going to be very intrigued to see if they keep doing that, or if we get a huge dump right before the games come out that basically reveal everything. I'm hoping it doesn't. One more thing I should probably touch on before I move off this topic. The map of the Sinnoh region was revealed, and there were 2 points of interest. One is that the overall layout of Pal Park is still there, minus a new cave. That's something that I saw some people point out on Twitter, and my curiosity is going to be more so towards, how does Pal Park even work in this game? Because Pal Park was one of those things that doesn't seem like it's going to be as necessary. This game is already slated to have Pokemon Home compatibility at some point in 2022, so in terms of needing a way to transfer Pokemon into it, I don't see the point. So my curiosity is going to be, what purpose is this going to serve in terms of the game? And the other thing we saw is that in the map, the Battle Frontier does not seem to be there. They showed the layout of the Battle Tower from the original Diamond and Pearl, so it looks like we're going to only have that. That being said, though, that's not too big a deal. The Battle Frontier was obviously already a very niche feature, and a lot of players probably weren't using it, or like would like dabble in it but then get frustrated because you needed competitive builds. And personally, even if it came back, I probably wouldn't use it myself. Like, I might like go through and do a few things, maybe fight Palmer the first time, maybe toy around with the Battle Factory, but I definitely wouldn't want to grind it out. My one curiosity, though, is how much of this Battle Tower is going to inherit features from Sword and Shield. The difficulty in that area was virtually non-existent. It was really, really easy to get through the Battle Tower, but I also really did like the rank and point system as opposed to streaks. I think that makes it a much more approachable feature, and I really hope that stays and we don't just revert to exactly how it was in Diamond and Pearl, because that was a very convenient thing to have. But, you know, again, that's not really a feature that appeals that much to me, so I'm probably not going to touch it all that much. But I know some people are going to be concerned about that, so I thought I'd at least bring it up. Also, I need to prime you a little bit for what I'm going to say about the Battle Frontier in my ORAS video. You'll see my full thoughts on the Battle Frontier there. Okay, and then moving off of that, we have to talk a little bit about Legends Arceus. So, Legends Arceus was the one I had more concerns about. Is this formula even going to work? And after everything I've seen today, I'm pretty convinced that this game is going to turn out pretty well. I am very, very excited about both games, but this one really caught my eye with some of the things that they showed. Obviously, I'm going to get this out of the way really quick. I'm still a bit peeved by the starter choices. I hate the fact that I have to choose between Cyndaquil and Oshawott, my two favorite starters, and like, if I can't get both, I'm not going to be happy. I'll bite my tongue about that and move on to the actually important stuff that matters to people who aren't me. Okay? The first thing that stuck out to me is that it seems like, unfortunately, the visual quality still isn't the best. It looked like the game is probably going to be running in 720p. Like, the models looked a bit jagged, and for as disappointing as it is, it's not completely unusual for a Switch game. A lot of Switch games, especially some of the ones that are more ambitious, like this one seems to be trying to, ran at those lower resolutions. To my knowledge, both Xenoblade games run at 720 when docked, and then can dip down to low as like, what, 384 undocked? Like, it's not unusual for the Switch to do that. That being said, it would be nice if we had an actual upgrade to the Switch that had more hardware capabilities, but it seems like that's not gonna happen. Although, granted, if we got a hardware upgrade, it would have like, what, 30 minutes of battery life? Like, there's no way they could make a really, really high-powered HD Switch that doesn't just die. So in terms of the overall systems, it looks like it's taking elements from an action RPG like Breath of the Wild and combining it with the turn-based elements of Pokemon. So you can play around in the action mode, and then if you want to actually fight a Pokemon normally, you throw out your Pokemon, and then you just go from there. Of the action side that I find the most interesting is the fact that Pokemon will attack the player, because that's not something we've seen all that often. Pokemon Colosseum showed it a little bit, but there's not really been that many other games that have done that, at least not in the main series. We've seen it in some spin-offs, but never to the extent that they're just going to attack the player and you're going to be able to black out from being attacked yourself by a Pokemon and not your Pokemon fainting. So that's definitely going to be fun, and I can imagine this could end up being like Breath of the Wild, where you end up just getting bodied by just this unsuspecting enemy, because, oh my god, Breath of the Wild, that game you could get killed so easily. Like, I remember how you could just get hit by an enemy and lose like a quarter of your hearts, and it's like, God, what happened? But I'll be curious to see how that turns out in this game. This game might err on the easier side, because, you know, Pokemon's primary demographic is like 7 through 12, I would presume, so I don't think they're going to make the game so unapproachable that they can't enjoy the game. The other point that I find interesting is the changes to the combat system. So Pokemon's combat has been kind of stagnant over the years. Like, there's been obvious changes like the physical special split and stuff like Mega Evolution and Z moves, but this seems like the first overall change to the game's combat that is more so than just surface level how things work. I can't say for certain how it works, but it looks like the turn order might be similar to how it's calculated in Final Fantasy X. And so ultimately what that leads to is that faster Pokemon not only move first, but will move more often. However, the way this is going to work out in mostly 1v1 combat is interesting, because there's not going to be that much variation in the turn order other than occasionally getting a double turn. But it is still something that I want to see continue into the franchise going forward if this works out really well for the game, which I presume it will. I also really like the fact that you can either have stronger or weaker versions of attacks. I know the main feature I'm probably going to use it for is either, like, if I have an attack that's not quite going to kill, I would use it to just end the battle quickly, or if I'm trying to catch a Pokemon, I might want to use the weaker versions to avoid accidentally knocking it out. Because I know I've tried to catch Pokemon, and I've used a move that I thought would be fine, and then, lo and behold, I knocked it out. Usually that's a crit though, but still, it's a case of where not having that happen would be extremely, extremely convenient, and I am really looking forward to see how much depth these changes add to the game. Obviously missing from the trailer and kind of relevant to that point about turn order, I am going to be very interested to see how this game handles double battles and whatnot, because We didn't see anything in the trailer, but I would presume that might be something that we'll see. And who knows, maybe we might even see triple battles come back. It might be a possibility. I don't know if that many people would be interested in seeing them. I personally thought triple and rotation battles were cool, but I know a lot of other people didn't, so it might not be something that they're incentivized to do. The things I am more interested in is the fact that we've got 2 new evolutions. The first time we've seen new Pokemon that aren't legendary or mythical introduced mid-generation. It is definitely going to be something that's going to make this game interesting, is that what new Pokemon forms and evolutions are we going to see? And again, like I said with Oras, I would much prefer that if some of these were left to surprise and left completely unrevealed until the game comes out, because you guys were bad about that in the past, and I want you to be better about it next time, Game Freak. Just don't do it. You don't need to show off everything. Obviously, it seems like the internet has taken a lot of attention towards the Hisui and Growlithe, and I get it. I love the cute dog Pokemon too. On the topic of these new Pokemon though, I am very intrigued by the fact that it seems like we're going to have ride Pokemon back. Because you saw the player jump off that cliff and then all of a sudden they come out on that Braviary, and that is going to be so cool to be able to fly around the Hisui region on a Pokemon. Similar, honestly, to soaring in the sky from Oras. Like, I loved that feature so much, and I'm so glad it'll make a return. Hopefully, though, we'll still have some type of, like, just instant warp system, because that's the one thing I didn't like about the soaring in the sky mechanic, is that you could fly around, but you really couldn't just instantly click somewhere to warp. But I guess, you know, Hoenn wasn't that big, so that wasn't a huge deal, but I feel like here in a larger open world, that's going to need to be something that's there. Even if it's before you get flying, and it's just sort of, you know, a implied fast travel where the player is implied to walk there, it's just not shown. And I guess from there we can move on to like some of the few things they showed us about the story. Again, I'm really glad they're not really showing anything all that much, and they're sort of leaving it to us to find out when we play the game. But it does seem like the story is going to be a bit of a mystery. They are being really hesitant in terms of Arceus. They are not showing Arceus in the game at all. So it seems like that is going to be a huge moment for the game, and I'm going to be very curious to see how Arceus plays in. There's just a lot of questions that I have, and it seems like for now we're going to at least have to wait. I am very okay with the concept of, you know, being part of like this survey corps. I do kind of like this idea of, you know, being an expedition, exploring the Sinnoh region, and sort of that idea sounds so cool. I am unbelievably excited for that. Like, there's so many different like exploration and survival mechanics that they're showing. Like the fact that you craft Pokeballs from apricorns. Oh god, that looks so cool. I guess on that one point though, I do find it kind of interesting that they only showed the one civilization. So it begs the question to me is, are there just not any other towns in this region? Is it just gonna be camps? Because if so, that might be interesting. Like, I guess it'll just be kind of, you know, interesting to find out when the game comes out, like, how civilized is the Hisui region at this point in time. And I guess with that, that covers just about every initial thought that I had. There's probably other things I'm gonna have in the future, and I might make an update video on that, maybe after we get some more concrete info. But for now, that just about covers everything about these games that I had to think. I am very intrigued by these games, and very excited to be able to get my hands on them. November and January cannot get here soon enough, as far as I'm concerned. I want to play these games so bad right now. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave a like and subscribe for some stuff in the future. I'm currently working on a video about Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. No clue when that's coming out quite yet. It's running a bit long right now, so it might take me a while, but the hope is to hopefully have it out by the middle of September at the absolute latest, but hopefully closer to maybe the beginning of the month. I don't know yet, and I won't know until it's done. But until that time, guys, I will see you around, and maybe with some other stuff like this. I don't know quite yet. I said I was gonna make more of these, but then I sort of, didn't for a month. And I'm gonna try to be better with that. It's just that I'm doing a lot of other things right now, and finding time and the energy to make and edit videos can be hard sometimes, so yeah. I'll see you guys around.